Stratford-on-Avon, in the heart of the English county of Warwickshire, is the birthplace of William Shakespeare. Considered by many to be the greatest playwright of all time, Shakespeare was born here in 1564 and spent the early part of his life here before moving to London sometime around 1590. Every year, some 3 million visitors flock to Stratford from all over the world to see the town which produced such genius and walk in the great bard's footsteps, or to see a production of one of his masterpieces by the world-famous Royal Shakespeare Company. Shakespeare was a prolific writer, producing over 150 sonnets and 37 plays during his lifetime, and creating some of the most memorable characters in English literature, from the tragic heroes of Hamlet and Macbeth to the star-crossed lovers of Romeo and Juliet and the fools in King Lear or The Tempest. Yet while his work is studied the world over by students and academics alike, very little is known about Shakespeare's life, and to this day he remains something of an enigma. The author Charles Dickens said, "The life of W.S. is a fine mystery, and I tremble every day lest something should turn up."
So we're at William Shakespeare's birthplace, so this is the house in which William Shakespeare was born.
Did Shakespeare come from a large family?
Well, he was one of 8, but only 5 survived. So when he was born, he had had 2 sisters before him, but they had died when they were about only a few weeks old. So that makes him the eldest boy and the heir to the fortune. He was born in 1564, which we know was a plague year here in Stratford.
And can you tell me, what does this house comprise of?
Well, it consists originally of a parlour downstairs where visitors would have been greeted and they would have slept if they needed to stay the night. The hall where the family would have eaten their main meal at 11, which took about 2 hours, a long time, but that was for the family to rest from the working day. The workshop where we are now, which is where the business was run from, where John Shakespeare made the gloves. John Shakespeare was probably one of 3 glovers here in the town. We actually think he was one of the most high-end ones. And gloves are a very popular gift in this period. And then upstairs where the bedrooms are, including of course the birth room where William Shakespeare and his 8 other siblings were born. So you'll notice the crib by the side of the bed where a young child would sleep, and then you have a truckle bed where an older child would sleep, and if there is no child, a servant would sleep in there.
So going through the rooms, first room that we saw with a bed in it, was that more like a guest room, a showroom if you will?
Yep, that's your showing off room. That's where you're showing off how wealthy you are. So the signs in there are obviously the bed. Beds are cost about £20. The local schoolmaster here in Stratford earned £10 a year. So you can only have a bed if you can afford it. So in that room, the bed is by the window, so that when your neighbours walk past, they look in and they see you can have a bed. Because beds downstairs signify beds upstairs. The floor in that room, again, you wouldn't think much of it today, it's a stone floor. It's called blue lias limestone, and stone again is another sign of wealth.
Was there a time when this house was in danger of not being preserved?
In the Victorian period, an American gentleman wanted to buy the house and take it back to America. He wanted to have it demolished brick by brick. But Charles Dickens, he comes along and he helps the public raise £3,000 in order to buy it, and that's when the Birthplace Trust as a charity is set up.
This is Anne Hathaway's cottage in Shottery, which is just outside Stratford-upon-Avon, and the house itself was built in 1463, 2 rooms, a parlour and a kitchen, and it was later extended from 2 rooms to 12. Anne Hathaway was born in the house in 1556, and she was the eldest daughter of 7 surviving children, and she married William Shakespeare in 1582. But after she married, they didn't live in this house, they lived with his family in the centre of the town.
It was a sheep farm, they were sheep farmers, so there was about 90 acres of grazing land for sheep.
There's very little known about Anne Hathaway. There are no paintings, no drawings, no sketches of her. In fact, the only possible clue to how she looked comes in one of Shakespeare's sonnets when he refers to somebody who has got raven black hair, coral red lips and a very white complexion. And in the sonnet itself he makes a play on the words Hathaway, which we think is Hathaway. So that is the only description we have of her.
Anne was quite old when she married William. Back in those days, was she bordering on being an old woman?
She was 26, and in those days she was very much bordering on being an old woman, or an old maid as we would say. I mean, the average life expectancy for a woman was only 30 and for a man 35, even for this class of person. And of course when she married William Shakespeare she was 3 months pregnant. And in those days, with him being 18, they had to have a special marriage licence. That cost £40. Now in today's money you're talking about probably 40,000 at least. This money was refundable. It was issued by the Bishop of Worcester, and it was refundable providing the man married the woman. Unfortunately, William Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway, so they got their money back.
Shakespeare died on the 23rd of April 1616 and is buried in Holy Trinity Church, Stratford, next to his wife Anne, to whom he intriguingly left his second best bed.